Good morning, participants. Good morning, everyone. We're just going to take 5 more minutes to allow more people to enter the room, and then we will start the event. Thank you very much for connecting.
Also?
Hi.
I see we have reached all our speakers, so we can start this event. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates from the permanent representation before the RBAs, representatives from national and international organizations, governments, farmer organizations, academy, foundation, non-governmental organization, representative from diplomacy and Festival della Diplomazia, their colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. I'm very pleased to welcome all of you to this webinar on leveraging reimbursable technical assistance to achieve SDG 1 and 2. The focus of this webinar is to present IFAD program on reimbursable technical assistance, an innovative IFAD program aimed at providing high-level technical assistance on agricultural related matters. Learn from concrete experiences from IFAD and other RTA providers, and finally explore how RTA, along with our member states, can support the achievement of Agenda 2030. So without further ado, I'm very pleased to give the floor for opening officially this meeting to our Associate Vice President, Donald Brown. Donald is an experienced professional in development cooperation. Before joining IFAD, he has also been working for DFID at very senior professional position. So please, Donald, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Marco, and good morning, afternoon, and evening to everybody. Marco, you may need to mute your one. There's feedback coming from your side. Thank you. And it's a real pleasure to be able to open this seminar. I'm also just looking through the screens. I'm really impressed. There's already 130. Well, it's going up every moment I speak. 134, 136, and climbing rapidly. So I'm really pleased because actually it shows the interest there is in reimbursable technical assistance. So it's obviously a really important issue for many of our members. So that's great. Anyway, Excellencies, distinguished guests, all protocols observed. Let me sort of say IFAD's traditional financial solutions, I mean, namely our loans and grants, is underpinned by decades of experience in this area, and has obviously delivered many critical investments, of which many of you know on the ground through our projects and programs, and really contributed to significant results. But, nevertheless, the world changes, IFAD needs to change and refresh, and countries are, as we're seeing, are looking to demand different sort of support from IFAD too in that context. And this is where, for us, the Reimbursable Technical Assistance Program starts coming in. It was established in 2012 and really was meant to be a complement to IFAD's toolbox on being able to respond to country needs and to provide a sort of a tailor-made set of technical services on a cost recovery basis, either as a standalone or a complementarity to an existing program. So it's taken us a few years to really get it off the ground, but I think we've seen enormous amounts of interest over the last 2 or 3 years. And we very much see that moving in the next phase of IFAD's replenishment process, IFAD 12, as something where there is significant demand. And it covers a wide range of sort of requests from partners, from sort of straightforward advisory facilities for new policies or programs or issues, through to some project related services. So it's kind of both technical and analytical. And since this establishment, we've managed to build up a portfolio and a pipeline currently of about 10 RTAs in Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. But as I say, we're seeing a lot more inquiries in this area. And so it's certainly a timely manner for us to have a conversation on this. And I think as part of our response, we realised that we in IFAD as well need to dedicate more internal capacity and resource to responding to that demand on RTAs. And we have a dedicated unit now set up with Marco facilitating that to ensure that we can better respond, and also ensure that we are getting the learning from the RTAs coming back to improve the offer on a regular basis. I mean, we see the benefits of an RTA from a number of different perspectives. I think for a number of our upper middle income country member states, RTA is an attractive proposition where the demand is more for IFAD's technical skills and experience in our niche area than they are for preferential lending terms and financial resources, because it obviously allows an engagement with our member states that also are starting to graduate from IFAD borrowing. But also we see that RTAs are being increasingly demanded by some of the low middle income and our low income member states, where they're looking for specific partnerships, and often actually attracting third party resources to complement our financing. So we're getting requests from other donors to engage with some of the low income and low middle income to provide additional technical support that often is complementary to other partner loans, but also to help facilitate the co-financing from other international financiers such as the Green Climate Fund, and to increase that level of assurance in there and expertise, particularly where borrowing capacity may be limited, and where knowledge is a powerful skill, and we can bring that to bear. So in providing RTA services, we feel that IFAD has a unique comparative advantage in the area that we obviously specialize in rural transformation, with over 40 years of specialization in agriculture and rural transformation, particularly for the poorest. And in many of the countries, we've got a deep country knowledge, which has been going on for about 40 years, and the experience to bear from those projects and engagements with governments and partners. And obviously, not being a profit seeker, we hope the advice we can give through RTAs is going to be very objective. So maybe with that, I hope that the webinar will be very useful to acquaint you more with the RTA program, but also it will be an opportunity for us to share views and thoughts across a range of issues that will also help us as we move to the future be able to give you further support. So with that, I would just like to wish you all a very productive webinar, and I'm glad to see that that we've now got 174 participants. So boy, I am really impressed at the interest in this. With that, I'll hand back over to you, Marco. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Donald, for your support and your enlightening words. Actually, just to inform, we had some 300 participants registered till yesterday night and some 60 countries connected from all over the world. Now let's get into the heart of this event. Let me just explain the roadmap I will follow in moderating this debate. Instead of having traditional speeches, I will be asking to our distinguished speakers 2 guiding questions. Every speaker will have a maximum of 4 minutes, and I repeat, maximum 4 minutes to reply my question. Then I will open at the very end of all the speeches a question time for animating the debate. I ask you to all participants to do not wait the very end of the 5 speeches for raising questions or comments. We have Zoom, you have a chat, you can provide comments at any time. So please do, so that we can start having a listen and not having you in queuing or avoiding misunderstanding. After the question time, I will ask our Associate Vice President of the Strategic and Knowledge Department, Mrs. Maaike van Hingegen, to closing the event. So now I'm glad to open officially this meeting by asking our colleague Dina Saleh, the Regional Director for the Division of Near East, North Africa and Europe, to take the floor. Dina has a long experience in IFAD and in the concerned area. Dina, traditionally the Middle East and the Gulf in particular is an area where reimbursable technical assistance is highly considered. Usually countries in the area are eager to collaborate with the high-level professional providers like IFAD. Moreover, the competitive advantage of IFAD in agriculture is indisputable. How did the dialogue with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia started, and what are the main pros and cons you faced in proposing an RTA to that country? Please, Dina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Marco. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all colleagues. This is quite a loaded question, Marco, so I'll try to, in 4 minutes, as you said, to give you a bit of a background. So let me start with a little bit of history. IFAD has a long-standing partnership with the countries of the Middle East, who are also its founders. And as you all know, there is a great contrast which exists in the region, composed of countries that are so diverse and unique. It hosts some of the poorest countries and most fragile and conflict-affected areas of the world. But at the same time, this region also has countries, it borders with countries that are fast-paced economies and wealthy oil-rich states. But now let me focus a little bit on IFAD and what IFAD does in agriculture in the Middle East, as well as respond to Marco's question more directly about the RTA with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Historically, IFAD has invested about $6.5 billion in the region through more than 130 programs and projects. IFAD's investments in the region have contributed to improve livelihoods of poor, small-scale farmers and have accompanied the Middle Eastern countries to transform their rural economies and upgrade from subsistence farming to profitable agri-food value chains. Although countries in the Gulf are non-borrowing member states of IFAD, they have always been our reliable partners for development. Their support has been pivotal to make IFAD the only UN specialized agency in IFI exclusively dedicated to rural transformation. So in line with our mandate to work with the poor small-scale farmers in remote areas of its member states, which as I mentioned earlier, and in order to make the largest contribution possible to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the SDGs, IFAD approved a new business model in June 2017, which focuses on results and innovation. One of these innovations is the RTE instrument, which has so far proven to be an effective tool to offer our expertise to the countries of the Gulf. IFAD has a track record of adapting its business model as conditions in the member states change along with larger changes in the global economy. The RTA is a critical means of ensuring that IFAD has a wide and appropriate set of tools to leverage the knowledge and expertise that IFAD has gained over its 40 years of operation to benefit rural people and smallholder farmers. Even in countries where the need for ODA and IFAD lending is on aggregate, not as active. Could somebody please close their mute? Enya, please, you can mute.
Non, ils arrivent parfois quand les choses voyagent, on est
Dans ce
bloqué.
sens-là, il faut comprendre le.
Okay.
Thank you. So what is our comparative advantage? So IFAD is recognized as a provider of high quality solutions, and it targets the poorest households and communities in the most rural areas, and it has substantial experience in guiding the design of large government programs and providing supervision. In 2014, NEN, which is the Near East North Africa and Europe division, issued a small grant to the Arab Authority for Agricultural Investment and Development to conduct a needs assessment and business studies in the region of the Arab Gulf, included a mission to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to appraise the characteristics and the constraints of small-scale producers, as well as to recommend future investment opportunities to improve the livelihoods of the rural people. The subsequent bilateral consultations between our division and the Ministry of Environment, Water and Agriculture of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia led to the formalization of a request for a reimbursable technical assistance project. This formal request was followed by a scoping mission that was led by the NEN lead regional economist with a multidisciplinary team comprising of technical experts in the fields of agronomy, social inclusion, procurement, finance, institutions. And we proposed an area of intervention in the southern province of Jazan, which was discussed with all concerned parties, including the farmers, cooperatives, government officials, and the National Agriculture Development Fund of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The findings of this mission informed the development of a proposal that would closely align with Saudi Arabia's National Transformation Plan to boost the development of agriculture cooperatives and enhance their marketing capacity. So this is what we did. So it involved a mission, it involved discussing with the partners and identifying the region that is compatible with developing an RTA, and then responding to the needs of the partner. What was exactly the proposal? The proposal was to invest in a value chain and to support the marketing of cash crops such as coffee and mango. What were some of the pros of, yes?
Good. I think that the message was very clear, and I think that those are golden nuggets for our colleagues in the region. I have another question that I would like to fire you, but it's just for 2 minutes answer. So getting a first RTA is definitely a big achievement, and everybody recognizes that. And building upon this success to enhance IFAD RTA engagement with member states would be even a bigger accomplishment to demonstrate the reliability of IFAD as a provider of high-level quality assistance. What are the main recommendations that you would like to share with us to secure additional opportunities? You have 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Marco. You said it right. The programmatic RTA project with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has been a great achievement for IFAD, as it was also the very first program of this kind in the Gulf. The project is currently moving smoothly throughout its core activities in support of the coffee and mango value chain. This project is by far the largest ongoing RTA operation in IFAD, and we all believe that these positive results would trigger more RTAs in the region and globally. So just to say a few things, one of the lessons that we drew from the earlier RTA is that if you don't have a local presence, which is needed to ensure that the country knowledge is sufficient and sustainable, the RTA services would not be as impactful as we'd like them to be. So with the establishment of our liaison office in 2019 in the capital Riyadh, we're now closer to the operations and able to provide more real-time support and understand better the context. With this, the RTA is just one of the instruments at our disposal to engage with the non-borrowing member states, especially with countries of the Gulf. IFAD has traditionally played the role of broker and assembler of finance. And we can also use this RTA to accelerate bilateral assistance programs in favor of third-party countries, especially the least developed ones in the region. We have always an open dialogue with our partners, so we are discussing as we implement the RTA. We are, of course, having to modulate and to adjust and adapt the implementation according to the realities on the ground. And with that, we find that we're able to meet our objectives higher, but also to have more impact. So it's in the framework of the second high-level visit to Saudi Arabia and with IFAD senior management that the concept of the second RTA has been shaped. The proposal is still under preparation by IFAD and the IFAD officials and the Agriculture Fund, and it conceived to address the demand for highly specialized technical expertise in the private sector for investment promotion of Saudi Arabian agribusinesses in agriculture. We're now setting up a project delivery team, and we are deploying our in-house relevant experts to deliver the proposal to the government of Saudi Arabia. So this is still work in progress. We're working closely with the kingdom to be able to also align with their national transformation program as we also try to align ourselves with the government's development vision for 2030. I'll stop there, Marco, in case there are
Thank you, Dina. Actually, when I raised my question, I was not expecting that much. You are already anticipating us that you are in a second RTA in the same country, so it means that the country came back because we are a technical, reliable player. This is your inputs and this information allow us to celebrate this day even more than what we were expecting. Thank you very much. Let me now ask to our colleague Sara Mbago, Director for the Regional Division on East and Southern Africa, to come on board. Sara, beyond working for IFAD, has also worked for a long time in the World Bank as a senior agricultural economist. Sara, your division has opened the path towards RTA, an RTA experience in IFAD. In 2016, you were the first to initiate an RTA project in Mauritius, advising the local government to implement a more advanced seed legislation. According to the experience you gather from that RTA, what is the appetite for RTA from the IFAD countries in the East and Southern Africa? Please, Sara, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Marco, and I'm very happy. Thank you for inviting me here, dear colleagues, morning, afternoon, and evening. Indeed, we were the pioneer division in IFAD to pioneer engagement with Mauritius, and we drew many lessons from this experience. But maybe just to start and kick off my intervention, I'd like to say that Mauritius is one of Africa's most remarkable success stories in economic transformation. And over the past 3 decades, Mauritius has graduated from a low-income country to a high-income status. As of 2020, despite COVID, the national income per capita is about $12,700. So definitely this is, a country we're very proud of in the African context. But like many small island developing states, Mauritius is heavily reliant on imports to ensure its food security. And to date, annual food production in Mauritius is approximately 15,000 tons, which only meets 25% of its local requirements. So Mauritius, I'm showcasing the Mauritius experience here just to say that across East and Southern Africa, many African countries, there's a huge import bill, which creates a lot of pressure, fiscal pressure on many of these countries. And this experience in Mauritius is groundbreaking because it does go to show that making the right investments could turn it around. The 2008 global food crisis brought to the attention of Mauritius that it's very important to invest in the domestic food production for food security. And so in this crisis, Mauritius developed a national food security strategic plan And it started highlighting opportunities within that plan to boost investments. It basically identified seeds as a core issue because its seed market was underdeveloped and it imported over 50 or 60% of its seeds. And you can't achieve food security without it. So this is lessons right across Africa. And what was really our role in that? Well, the Mauritian government approached IFAD in 2015 to develop an RTE program to strengthen the seed industry. And basically the goal was to operationalize the Seed Act, which had been dormant really from 2013, and to try to operationalize it with a national seed policy, develop a strategy around it, and develop the key capacities to implement that strategy. So the areas of investment were to create a suitable legal and regulatory environment for the seed sector, establish a quality control system for seed testing and certification, develop procedures for field testing and new varieties and high priority crops, including potatoes, and basically boost capacity for testing and quality grading so that Mauritius could be a net seed exporter to the region. The RTA was signed in 2016, and 3 years later, in May 2020, there's lots of achievements. I'll just go into that. And the whole value of the engagement was about $1.15 million US. So that resulted in basically the policy being adopted, the establishment of the National Plant and Variety Seeds Office, fully staffed, a national seed laboratory, which has now been really certified seeds, and a national seed policy. And this just goes to show that with these concentrated efforts, you can really get concentrated results. Sorry, can you mute, please? So now what has happened is this has instigated demand from Botswana. We see demand from Namibia. These countries are really looking to support their small stock sector for export. We also see quite a number of countries coming up to say, how can we harness digital solutions for rural transformation? And they're looking at how they can cost us and approach IFAD to build that. Other demand is coming up in terms of analytics to get a better understanding of what the transition pathways would be in some of the countries in East Africa. We also see countries like Rwanda really looking into, say, and the SADC and East African bloc. We want to build resilience against all of these floods, against all the disruptions environmentally. And IFAD, you've had such a strong track record in resilience. Can you come in and help us come with the policy sets, build the capacities, early warning systems in order to be responsive, Marco? So this is
Sarah,
really the experience that we've had so far. Over to you.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's very remarkable that in such a short period of time, you have achieved so much. And it's, it's very remarkable the force that you put on it. I'm witnessing of this because I'm working with your staff on another team in Botswana. And I must confess that you are surrounded of very motivated and competent people. I have 1 minute more for asking you one little question. From your experience, what are the critical factors for a successful RTA engagement? Please, the floor.
This is an excellent question, Marco, because all RTAs are very different and very tailored. But what we have seen is absolute leadership, a clear vision for what you want the RTA to transform. And I think that has to be driven by the top, a clear minister with leadership and delegated responsibilities to a cohort of people who are going to work in tandem with the RTA team. This is absolutely essential. The second point is a proper diagnostic with proper analytical data to actually see what are you going to unlock. I think many people rush into it without necessarily understanding the problem and understanding the scope of the engagement. And then the third thing is to be able to understand, is this only sort of policy advisory work or is there an operational bit to this? The experience of Mauritius says it's good to do the policy and the advice, but it's also good to combine that with boosting operational implementation capacity. The third aspect is flexibility in all of this. I think really continual dialogue, an excellent team, you mentioned that already, continual dialogue, and we really spend time identifying the right team with the right mix of competencies and partnered that with very unique set of local capacities to drive the daily engagement, the weekly going up and forth. All those things constituted the essentials of the building blocks we needed for the successful RTA in Mauritius. And I must say, receiving feedback from them, allowing to adjust time frames, allowing to do the extensions were absolutely critical for success. So Marco, I think that's my contribution for this session. Thank you for having me on.
It was not only a great contribution, but you fully respected the time, so I'm very glad. So we'll certainly get back to you with the list of inputs that we are collecting now for preparing a golden book of recommendation for our people dealing with RTAs. Before moving to the other speaker, I would like to remind to all our to all our participants and speaker, of course, to maintain his micro muted. Otherwise, we will have strong and strange interferences, please. Now, let's move to Latin America and Caribbean regions and ask Rosanna Polastri, our Regional Director for Latin America and Caribbean, to take the floor. Rosanna has a strong experience in RTAs. She is dealing with RTA here in IFAD, and she has done it in her previous professional experience at World Bank. But most importantly, is she has done also in the other side of the barricade when she was Deputy Minister for Finance in Peru. Please, Rosanna, you have the floor. I have one straightforward question. Considering your long-term experience in RTA, you have been dealing with RTA before joining IFAD and now here in Rome. What are the main challenges for the RTA program in your region of reference? Please, Rosanna, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you for the interesting question, and good day to all of you. As you say, I have been on both sides, a provider and a user. And RTAs are not a simple thing to be done from a financial institution setting, because we are more or less, we have a chip in our minds that we are a lending institution. So it requires a lot of commitment and acceptance. We have to become much more focus on what we are going to be providing. No, it's a client-oriented service, as I said, RTA, and you will only succeed if you understand in depth the requirements, but also requires also for us to be adaptable and flexible, because you are dealing with governments and political actors that sometimes can shift their interest quickly. So we need to adapt. And IFAD and any multilateral organization that provides an RTA will need to understand that and be prepared for those situations. Also, an RTA has a challenge of having a team leader that can deliver timely. Normally, RTAs are requested for burning issues. Governments want the solution for today, and they are paying for it. The last thing the client wants to hear from you is that because of internal bureaucratic process, products are delayed. So this synchronization, it's quite important. It's very different from our mindset on preparing lending operations. I think that IFAD has a clear advantage. Some might think that it's a challenge, the fact that we are narrow only on rural aspects. But in fact, we are the only ones working on extreme rural poverty and have years of accumulated knowledge. So instead of to me seeing this as a challenge, I see this as a comparative advantage. So what will be the challenge instead is to start thinking about accumulated challenges as best practices and evidence-based that we can use to meet our client demands. Our clients have usually problems, issues, they need solutions, and we can come up with this by all the accumulated knowledge that we have. And the international aspect brought to the table is quite powerful, and we should not underestimate that. I think that another challenge for us is to think that it's not only limited to assistance. I think the word assistance for some of our countries is not well received, and I think we need to go away from that word. It's that we are not assisting, we are providing a service, or we are accompanying a client in a difficult situation in which they need solutions. Particularly extreme rural poverty is not something easy to eradicate. And IFAD has a lot of experience and good practices with programs, and we have been extremely successful. I think we also have to think not only about staying with the typical advisory service, but we can also work with implementation and supervision and sometimes design of projects, particularly in my case, in the Latin American region, where we as IFAD, because of the per capita income threshold, we not necessarily have a large resources for funding. We find ourselves being able to provide services such as design, implementation, and supervision of projects that can be designed by other multilaterals, but not only multilaterals. We can also partner with national development banks, such as what we are doing with Benedes. So those will be my recommendations in terms of challenges. Basically, are just think outside the box, try to listen, to understand, and make sure that you have the powerful knowledge and evidence base to bring to the table, particularly bring international expertise.
Thank you, Rosanna. Thank you, Rosanna. You have clearly indicated that all regions are not the same. And it was very interesting also the comparison, the terminology used and the comparison between assistance and assessment that may have an important impact. Another minute for just one direct question. As I said before, you are an experienced professional in RTA. So what are the key recommendations that you would like to provide to our colleagues in going forward on RTAs? Please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Well, very similar to my last idea. I think it's very much related. My recommendation will be to choose very carefully and be selective on the RTAs we want to commit. On our side. On the other side, as Sarah already said, you need strong commitment and you need the buy-in from the ministry that you will be working with. That for me will be the combination for success. And we should also start partnering with other think tanks or local or international actors that can help strengthen our teams, especially for countries in which we not necessarily have a large program or of lending or an office. As you know, IFAD doesn't have presence globally, and particularly in my region, we don't have many offices. So when we want to provide an RTA, we need to rely on local knowledge also, such as think tanks or research. The other thing is we need to start doing a lot more of outreach and knowledge management. I believe that IFAD has accumulated more than 40 years of best practices, and we need to systematize them. And perhaps the demand, we could generate the demand by just looking internally of all what we have. The potential of what we have been doing to be transformed into an RTA is enormous, and we have still a long way to go. So basically, start thinking outside the box when you design your country programs, and let's not be only square on lending. Our clients have other needs and other priorities on their tables that perhaps we can provide and help them through an RTA.
This was very interesting. I mean, one aspect, be selective, is very critical, and we count on regional division for doing this kind of selection. Now, let's, as Rosanna was saying, let's think out of the box and let's move out our box. And let's now call a couple of speakers that works in other organizations and that are also familiar with this service. I'm glad to have today on board Jamal Al-Kibi, the resident representative for the World Bank in the United Arab Emirates. Beyond this important role, Jamal is much known as the golden boy of RTA. He has been dedicated a lot of time to this tool, and he works for the World Bank on this service from a very, very, very long time. So, Jamal, giving your long experience, giving the long experience of the World Bank and also your experience in reimbursable technical assistance, what does it take for reimbursable technical assistance to work optimally in a country? Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you for inviting me, and I really learned a lot from the speakers before me. If we want to think about how to structure the process within the institution for staff to focus on substance, I can think of 3 levels that we can address: a strategic level, and institutional level, and an operational level. Strategically, the issue from our experience is to provide a coherent approach and consistent answers to a lot of questions that will come from various officials in various countries. As colleagues previously said, each country's situation is different, so we need to be coherent. And the lesson of experience to deal with it is you need to set a central reference point or a central unit to help both colleagues working on the country and specialists in the sector address those issues. This is not something they deal with every day. At the institutional level, what helped us a lot is to have an operational framework for all staff to refer to. The operational framework needs to be adjusted frequently per experience. It changes a lot, so it's a live document. What complements an operational framework is adopted legal templates to allow us to move forward quickly once the technical experts agree on what needs to be done. That simplifies work, and the objective again is keep the focus on supporting clients and keep the focus on substance. Don't let the process take a lot of time and effort. Coming to the operational issues, I can go a little bit more fast and more clear. The practical challenges, if I may, are as follows. Managers of technical units are already overwhelmed with work. We need to make sure that RTA engagements are clearly part of their work program, are included in all their operational briefings and reviews so that we do not overburden their capacity. Next is how to select staff for RTA. In our experience, successful RTA requires the most experienced staff you have. There is a lot of frontier learning in RTA. There is typically a lot of new questions that come in RTA engagements that do not come under normal lending operations or technical assistance. So you need your best staff. You need to have incentives for your staff to work on them and in teams. Another question that comes a lot from officials is the balance between internal staff and consultants. Part of ensuring quality is to have a lot of staff who understand your institution and how it works. A very interesting approach to address this operational issue is to try to mobilize retirees who know the issues very well, who know how to deal with ministers and officials. Practice managers typically trust retirees on substance, so it's easier for everybody. And for the institution providing RTA, RTA is a good opportunity to get retirees to coach new staff, groom new staff, and share experience and make sure that institutional memory is not lost. That's a big issue that we learn. The issue of scope was raised by several previous speakers. We have found that there is always a dynamic scope, and that is a problem. Our colleagues, staff of IFAD, staff of the World Bank, are dedicated staff. They really like to provide all the support they can to counterpart officials. The problem is sometimes we get out of scope, which requires more time, more budget, or we don't know enough about those issues. We need to stick to the scope, or if we want to adjust the scope, make sure that everybody who needs to know, legal, budget people, technical staff, the manager of the technical unit are all on board.
Good. Jamal, thank you. I think those is a very important information. I think what you said about the high level quality of the assessment country receive is critical. And I must confess that, and I must say, without offending anybody, that IFAS is indisputable, the leader in agriculture for development. So along with your support and your information, we'll certainly be able to combine the two things and provide the right assistance to our member states. I have 2 minutes more for asking you one straightforward question, that agitate my lips. I mean, I'm sure you have been confronted with this. I mean, how do you, how do you start dialoguing with a country that used to get free assistance and suddenly, because of the new RTA system, has to pay for getting the same technical assistance? Please, you have the floor.
Not easy. It's difficult to break old habits. And definitely, we international organizations are not about competing with consulting firms, and the issue is not that we can be cheaper or we are a non-profit organization. The issue is a lot of situational analysis, as the experience of IFAD is actually showing. So let me go from relatively easier situations to more complicated situations, and I'll keep it brief. High-income countries, it's obvious this is a new area or a new entry point. RTA is a new tool for us to get into such circumstances. Graduating countries, and I'm happy to have heard that some countries in Africa are moving up on per capita income. So as countries graduate from borrowing to non-borrowing support, it is a natural move. You have a lot of countries like the BRICS at some point, when they are doing well, they really come to you for knowledge transfer, not for borrowing. They might need to use their borrowing headroom for other sources of lending. So RTA would come in as a non-lending source. When you have a lot of knowledge about a country, 30, 40 years of involvement in a country, perhaps you want to start to go deeper and use RTA. RTA is very good when some countries want to move quickly on reforms, rather than wait for program agreements or work program agreements, or wait for availability of budget for free assistance from our institutions. Perhaps countries can be convinced that if you want to move faster, RTA is one approach. Confidentiality that can come in RTA is helpful. At the World Bank, we have, and most of our international financial institution partners, we have open access to knowledge. If we finance any support, it is available for all countries to learn from. That prevents some countries from asking us to do deeper analysis, sensitive issues, tough questions. RTA allows for some confidentiality that might allow our institutions to get to policy issues that are difficult to get to otherwise. Next is the issue of trying to develop relations with local authorities or subnational authorities. RTA might be a good tool for us to get into those situations where we might not be able to otherwise under normal operations. So those are some situations where we can convince authorities, our members of our institutions, that you don't need to wait or rely on traditional institutionally financed support. If you contribute to our budget, if you pay for our support, we can address those issues, we can address timeliness, we can get into deeper issues, we can get into sensitive issues and serve you the best we can, given that you are still a member of our institution. Let me stop here, Marco.
Thank you, Jamal. I started by saying that you were the golden boy of RTAs. You maybe now are the mature boy of RTA, but you are always a big source of information. And we will certainly come back to you and disturbing you, harassing you on having more and critical information about that. Now let me move to our last of the speakers. Last but not least, of course, Carsten Rasmussen, who is a colleague from the European Commission, Directorate General Regio. Carsten has worked for almost 30 years in the European Union, has a long experience in this kind of services and in particular in supporting this kind of services. So Carsten, I will be very direct. I mean, the European Union has a long tradition in supporting and sponsoring reimbursable technical assistance. And you have worked in Eastern European countries with a number of international institutions, World Bank with Jamal, the European Investment Bank, and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, on the mode of reimbursable technical assistance, of course. So what is your experience with this? And how can you contribute on this discussion? Please, Carsten, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I have been involved with cooperating with international financial institutions, as you said, first of all, the World Bank, but also the European Investment Bank and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, in areas where, in support of the funds that the European Union is granting to, in this case, our member states, we were very often in a situation of identifying needs for reform or for an increase of the efficiency of the governance system underlying our grants. So our grants often were in a situation of not being optimally efficient, and we needed to fix the system somehow. Now, if you are an EU member state, or if you are a recipient of funding, and you have such a problem, everybody recognizes we need to fix something. Where do you go? Of course, you can go to the market and you can buy consultancy, but that requires that as a state, as a system, you're able yourself already to define that assignment properly, to get around the topic and say, well, this is exactly what we need. We have not forgotten anything. Now we go out and we tender it. This is where it has been a tremendously positive experience to work with all three IFIs. In our case, we are ourselves an international organization, and having the possibility for respectively our member states and the European Commission itself to buy services from the IFIs in areas of extreme expertise has been both easy and efficient. It's easy for somebody representing an international system, as I do, because you are speaking to people with the same mindset, people who come in with a mission, with a mandate, with a certain ethic. The IFAD has a very clear mission of its own, and that overlaps more or less one-to-one with the respective mandate and mission of other organizations like our own. Meaning you do not need to establish trust, you do not need to question who are you and so on, what is your track record. It is absolutely not like entering into a relationship with a consultancy firm, even if that consultancy firm may be of a high reputation and able to mobilize services that are credible and so on. The unique position of IFIs also allows them to benchmark against the world, so to speak. And for us, working with Bulgaria and Romania, sometimes it was puzzling for a European to be faced with experts brought in from Chile or Israel. We are not used to that. We are used to more looking at ourselves, but it was also very refreshing and rejuvenating. And the networks that the IFIs have, due to their own involvement and engagement as actors on the world stage, gives them that credible opportunity of very quickly and credibly identifying high-level experts. Another element that I'd like to add to this positive sort of impression is the speed. Once you have a system up and running for reimbursable technical assistance, you base that on negotiated tariffs, hours, man days, and so on. And you do not need to go through the complicated, time-consuming business of calculating all this ad hoc each time you need a new assignment. So you are actually facing a system that can be, in a sense, automatized. Of course, not in the selection of the experts or in the exact definition of the mandate, but definitely in the selection of, or in the configuration of the technical side of it. I would finally say that working with IFIs is, of course, working with systems that are acutely aware of the importance of governance. Knowing from their own experience that fixing something is not just a matter of giving somebody the correctly written law, or say we take the law from country X and it works there, and look, it's going to work in your country. But the awareness that all contexts are different and that the human component matters, that the state of rule of law, the state of corruption, the state of configuration of a country in national and regional levels, the relationship or not with the NGO sector, all that is a specific situation that matters and that enables or disables us to go into a sector. Here again, that awareness is, so to speak, built in to the action of any IFI, given its mandate, and that makes things an awful lot easier. So all in all, this has been and still is today a very positive symbiosis. The services that the member states or the European Commission is buying from the IFIs are not cheap. I think one has to be very clear on that. But I think this is very
much interesting what you're saying. And I mean, about the cost of the services, well, cheap things are always very expensive, let me say that. And you always need to have adequate services. And I was very interested to know that, you are available and you are interested in providing support to countries through the intervention of competent, no-profit, independent bodies like international organizations, in particular IFI. But, I'm known to be a very pragmatic person, a very practical person. And I want to ask you one direct issue. And you have to be careful about what you answer. And you have 2 minutes for that, because I want to reboot after. Do you see a scope for IFAD to collaborate with the European Union on the delivery of reimbursable technical assistance? And if so, where and how to expand our cooperation? Please, you have 2 minutes for answer that.
Well, certainly in terms of scope, the part of the European Union's activities that is overlapping with the scope of IFAD is probably in the area of development aid. So the European Union, being a very big donor on the world stage, is engaged in the regions that are part of your focus regions and that are typically out of Europe. So here there's definitely a job to do, and there are synergies available. Let me speak about the experience we had with the 3 IFIs with which I've been working. From the day, and I think this was around 2011-12, when we sort of commonly cracked the code of systematizing this, we have expanded these, or the IFIs have expanded their activities, and we have expanded our budgets accordingly. I could, based on that experience, based on the positive experience I've had with those 3 IFIs, I can see no reasons why there would not be similar opportunities available to the European Commission and IFAD to cooperate and to find ways to reimburse the services delivered by IFAD as technical assistance to the benefit of countries, of recipient countries, but to have that financed from the European Union. What it would take is to draw up the necessary agreements with the European Union in terms of the reimbursability. But since we already have at least 3 such models with the World Bank, the EBRD, and the EIB, that should be relatively easy to do. But this being said, I cannot speak on behalf of our development policy, but I can only recommend you at least to spend some efforts looking into this. This is something I think could be of high value to countries, and definitely very interesting both for you and for the European Commission, because it would feed into a need that the Commission has for high-level expertise, and that we, although we represent an awful lot of funding, do not have as such. I mean, we are not a system with highly qualified experts. We are a system of, I would hope, well-educated generalists.
Stop here, otherwise, already with that, from Monday, you will start receiving calls and emails, for answer from our people. So already with that, it's enough. If you keep going, we will be asking for, more and more and more. But this is very good, actually. I'm very glad that you said that, because for us, it's very critical. It's not the quality of the service that we can provide, but sometimes is the financial availability that it's also. In a world that becomes more and more and more complex, we need more and more and more partnership at all levels, private sector, international organization, government, everyone has to do his role and his contribution. So, and what you are saying, it's extremely, extremely, extremely interesting. Now, as I said at the beginning, before going to the closing remarks of our AVP, Mike van de Kienen, I want to open the floor for question and discussion. Their colleagues, their friends, their participants, I must admit that you have been victim of our own success. I have a list, an incredible list of questions that would deserve at least twice the time we had for this webinar. But as I said before, I'm a very pragmatic and practical person, so we will take only 6 questions, and I commit myself to reply in details via email or via any other social to every one of you. We do have your email, we do have your contact, so you will get an answer in case you are not selected for a question or a comment. So the first person that it's under my list that has raised a blue hand for speaking is His Excellency, the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Certainly, considering the partnership and relationship that we are developing, he has very interesting comments to raise. Please, Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Marco, for giving me the floor. I am here really not to advocate, but I would like to just stress that the success that we got from the RTA program in Saudi Arabia is considered a win-win solution. The feedback that I got from the Ministry of Water, Environment and Agriculture back home, they were extremely happy. And definitely, I would like just to stress what my previous colleagues have mentioned. The RTA is something that you can do a reform very quickly, and it's based on many facts, but the deep knowledge and a nonprofit entity like IFAD, and also the objectives and the advices and the political are neutral. So this enable any country that would like to be engaged in such RTAs. There was many added values with IFAD as a provider of a technical assistant. The sharp knowledge, the experience of the consultants that they provide, also the sustainable and food production that they are well aware of with the modern value chains. These all helped to have a success in RTA. It's a win-win solution for many countries. And as Dina mentioned, we are now thinking of expanding, and we have doubled the RTA requests for Saudi Arabia. There was a very good program with the mango and the coffee in Jazan, and it's the outcomes we are seeing now is very tremendous. So I really would encourage all member countries to start such programs. And I'd like to take this opportunity for congratulating and thanking the management and the president, who was always with us, and definitely the cooperation between Saudi Arabia and IFAD have been since the establishment of IFAD. Well done. Thank you so much. We're looking for more of RTAs with Saudi Arabia. Thank you, Marco. Over to you.
Your Excellency, those are music for our ears, and thank you for advocating on our behalf. I don't know if Dina, my colleague, want to take over and spend some words. Dina, the floor to you.
Thank you, Marco, and take this opportunity to thank His Excellency Mr. Al-Ghamdi for those very nice words. It encourages us, of course, to do more and work harder. As already was mentioned earlier, this is a partnership. It's not a one-sided solution. And therefore, as long as we are aligned as partners, and obviously it requires a lot of efforts, as was said by Mr. Jamal Ali earlier, and a lot of expertise. And I think this is what IFAD brings to the table, its knowledge and its experience. So we really look forward to more of such RTAs and be able also to serve the wider region. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The second person I have in the list is the distinguished representative of Argentina. Your Excellency, Ambassador Cherniak, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, my dear Chair. Congratulations for organizing this event, and I hope you will go on organizing other meetings and other important meetings like this one. I would like to ask a question to our key IFAD officer in our region, Rosanna Polastri, but first let me recognize her great effort, in particular during the terrible effects of COVID-19 in Latin America and Caribbean countries. Most of the times, RTA operations create valuable information and lessons learned that could benefit other countries facing similar challenges. In your experience, Rosanna, what is the best way to make good use of this new knowledge and make it readily available for any interested party? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ambassador. I ask Rosanna to take the floor and to provide the answer. Please, Rosanna, you have the floor.
Thank you, Marco, and thank you, Ambassador Cherniak, for your kind words. We couldn't have done this if we would have done it together with the teams in the countries. So yeah, it's a very interesting question, and I am going to answer it using a past experience, because I think it's not straight the answer. I had an experience through the World Bank providing a RAS for the Chilean government, in which they asked us to evaluate their public reform program. And in fact, the results of the evaluation, they wanted to use it to make corrections into their programs. And in that sense, they didn't want us. We signed a confidentiality agreement, because this is a service that we are paid for, and we were not able then to use that to share with other countries. So what was the lesson for us? That when we do this type of services, we need to talk in advance with the client if it's possible to have certain products of the service that we can use it for knowledge sharing. In other cases, like designing a project or supervising a project, is something much more straightforward, because we can bring in the design experience or knowledge acquired through other designs. So that's much more straightforward. But when you are evaluating programs, that's a little bit more sensitive. Right now, we are working with the Peruvian government towards an RTA in which our department, RIA, will evaluate agro-rural program. So again, in that discussion, we need to be very careful on how we use information that we gather on the evaluation, because results can be sensitive and need to be managed internally. But I'm sure that the way we elaborate the impact assessment of this program, there are certain aspects that we can use them and have perhaps a dissemination conference and share it with other regions. It's something that, as I said, we need to talk from the beginning. Thank you, and over to you. I hope I answered your question. Over to you, Marco.
Thank you very much, Rosanna, for your straightforward question. Now I would like to call the representative of Dominican Republic, His Excellency Ambassador Mario Arvelo, who has requested the floor. Please, Ambassador, you have the floor.
Yes, I was having trouble unmuting myself. Thank you, Marco. When we spoke about this, I was expecting something else from this meeting, and I'll explain myself very quickly. Among the participants, I see a lot of young people, students, young professionals, and when we spoke, you and I, Marco, I was expecting a different audience, perhaps more technically minded, and so thinking that I was going to address mostly colleagues, some of whom are in fact connected, I wrote down some notes with rather boring talking points. I have discarded those, and I will tell you this. Yesterday, we saw the largest daily increase in COVID infections since the pandemic began. Indeed, since the first reported cases late last year. Well over 500,000 people tested positive to the virus just yesterday, that's Thursday. And hopefully a majority of them will not even experience symptoms, but a sizable number will, and some of them, in fact, will lose their lives. Many more will lose their livelihoods, and a disproportionate number of them are the most vulnerable. The people for whom SDGs 1 and 2 were drawn up. These are the poor, the hungry, the malnourished. These are the same people that are at the front lines of this enormous challenge, the COVID-19. At yesterday's rate, during this activity, if I just was making a quick mental calculation, upwards of 30,000 people will have contracted just in the course of this conversation, will have contracted this life-threatening disease that is having direct impact throughout the food systems, starting at the source. We're talking about rural communities, food producers, family farmers across the developing world. And we need to keep this in mind as we discuss what needs to be done to liberate humanity from poverty, hunger, and malnutrition. And the only answer to the common problems of humanity is multilateralism. And this is a great deal of what IFAD does, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, which was born out of a food crisis a little less than 50 years ago when I was a small child. That crisis spawned the IFAD. And now IFAD is at the forefront, as we have heard from the line of experts that Marco has put together, of a truly useful tool, which is reimbursable technical assistance. Sometimes in comprehensible technical lingo, we refer to it as RTA. And we need to bear in mind, IFAD is not an international or a cooperation agency. It is an international financial institution under the Charter of the United Nations, an intergovernmental entity, meaning that government representatives such as myself and colleagues that have spoken, Ambassador Gandhi and Cherniak, we have governance responsibilities establishing IFAD's mandate, conceiving and approving its strategic thrust, and overseeing how it is managed. And IFAD is a repository of knowledge for designing and implementing rural development programs and projects that by definition and have this self-evident purpose: combating rural poverty, liberating the rural people from the scourge of hunger and malnutrition under President Humbo's leadership. And I've worked very closely with Donald and Rosanna, who just spoke again. And they will tell you that it is easy for any government just to print cash and throw it around. But we do not need to have a PhD in economics to know that complex problems such as chronic poverty in rural areas are not so easily solved. And that is why we have IFAD, and that is why we have tools such as RTA. So in finishing, I will speak to the young men and women listening. Keep studying, keep learning, engage with facts and science, do your research, and in a few years, you will be the experts in future festivals of diplomacy. You will be the ones making political decisions. You will be the ones coming up with technical solutions. You will be the ones carrying them out on the field. My hope is that you use this experience and other experiences in these webinars and these conversations to get this real solid foundation in knowledge and also in social conscience, so that you can change the world that my generation and older generations are working on it. We haven't gotten there yet. 2030 is just around the corner, and you are the answer. You are the response.
Thank you, Ambassador Arvelo. Actually, you are very right. So multilateralism is the way, and we have all to work. We all have to do our part. Private sector, international organization, government, everyone, even the next generations. Thank you very much for your contribution. Now, in the chat, we have received a comment from one of our beloved member states, the Guinea Equatorial. We have received this comment in Spanish, and we have translated. It's a non-official translation, so I will read on behalf of the diplomatic mission of Equatorial Guinea. The delegation of Equatorial Guinea congratulates IFAD for organizing such an interesting webinar on the potential of reimbursable technical assistance to finance development. Equatorial Guinea is very committed to the program and its activities. Indeed, the government of Equatorial Guinea is negotiating with IFAD an reimbursable technical assistance project on value chains in specific areas of the agricultural sector. The exchange gathered so far confirm our initial expectations. Equatorial Guinea commits to keep discussing with IFAD the concerned activities and look forward to develop more in the field of RTAs. Thank you very much. Well, we thank you very much, Equatorial Guinea, for the kind words and the nice contribution. And I move to the list of the questions I have. There are still two questions. One from Cesar Parga, representative of the Organization of American States. Please, Mr. Parga, I ask you just to be concise. You have the floor. Thank you.
Yes. Good day, everyone. Thank you, Marco, for the opportunity. I'm delighted to be part of this great global seminar. I serve as Chief of Competitiveness, Innovation, and Technology at the Organization of American States. We are working on the development pillar to support countries in the Americas, in particular the Caribbean and Latin America. We engage with stakeholders, member states, to provide support in terms of policy dialogue, cooperation, facilitate exchange of good practices, and implement collaborative projects on the field and on policy issues. The pandemic has emphasized the need to modernize agriculture and to address food security. We have heard several comments on this regard. And it's important that as part of the development imperatives, there's more work to, re-engage in value chains, address the issue of not having access to imports, how to accelerate technology and innovation. So all these elements are part of the focus of countries now. And I think ambassadors were mentioning this, on how the economy is evolving to focus on life, the health, nutrition, education, sustainability, and resiliency. So we are looking forward to exploring new partnerships and working with IFAD and other partners to create and support programs in member states such as RTA. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parga, for your kind words, and certainly we will be delighted to start developing activities with your organization in your region of reference. Now we come to an end of this session, and I'm very glad to give the floor to our Associate Vice President, Maaike van Gieneggen, Associate Vice President of the Strategy and Knowledge Department. Before joining IFAD, Maaike worked for the Dutch Development Organization and has a long experience also in working for the World Bank. Please, Maaike, you have the floor. And thank you again for having accepted participating in this event.
Thank you very much, Marco. And I'm very happy to have been part of today's rich discussion. I would like to start by acknowledging the participation of such a qualified audience, not only qualified, but also in large numbers. The interest in this seminar, as Donald Brown said at the beginning, is quite overwhelming. I saw the counter of participants reach 200 at some stage, and nearly everybody stayed. So congratulations to the speakers for keeping the audience engaged. It was really constructive to listen to the panelists and their different experiences. And it's challenging for me to summarize this in a few words, but let me try to give you some observations as we wrap this up. First, as we heard from all the panelists, reimbursable technical assistance has a great potential, and they can support IFAD member countries. And they're the right tool to support progress towards food security, ending poverty, and stronger resilience. In other words, RTAs offer an additional instrument to accelerate going to the 2030 agenda. And thanks to Maria Alvaro for reminding us passionately of why we're doing all of this. It might sometimes be boring, but these are the nuts and bolts of reaching the SDGs. Second, I think the discussion showed that RTAs have a wide range of applications. They represent a viable option to test implementation of new models, to test out innovation, and to help with large-scale transformation and reforms. They have a great potential for scaling up because they influence a whole government program and are really a way of using know-how. We've listened to IFAD regional directors sharing their experiences of RTA, and both of the successes, but also of the challenges. Thank you for your honesty on that. I like the experiences we heard from Mauritius, Saudi Arabia, and Peru. The shifting approach from traditional IFAD activities, which are financing from IFAD to member countries, to a chart-based advisory service also requires a shift in the members' perspective. And I was especially pleased to hear His Excellency, the Ambassador of Saudi Arabia, telling us that the IFAD RTA to his government was impactful and responded to the needs of the Ministry of Agriculture. Thanks to colleagues from the World Bank and the European Commission, it's always good to hear other people's experiences and to learn from them. Let me give some full disclosure. I actually worked on reimbursable advisory services when I was at the World Bank over a decade ago. I worked on a RAS for wastewater treatment in Siberia in the Russian Federation. And a lot of my experience actually is echoed by what Jamal also talked. Reimbursable advisory services, or RTA, are a great way to make broader use of the deep expertise and practical know-how that exist in IFIs and international agencies. IFAD has great practical know-how on rural transformation that's inclusive and reaches the poor, reaches the vulnerable. This know-how can not only benefit low-income countries through financing, but can also benefit upper middle-income countries that still have large pockets of small-scale agricultural providers and rural poor. So the international and applied know-how of IFAD is unique. Jamal Al-Kibi called this situational awareness, and I like that term, it resonates with me. IFAD's reimbursable technical assistance is complementary to services that member states can acquire elsewhere, from consultancy firms, from NGOs, and from other international agencies. As my colleagues Sarah and Dina explained, the RTA that IFAD provides to member states is anchored in our long-term trusting relationships with government. This basis of trust was also highlighted by Karsten Rasmussen of the European Commission. Providing RTA and receiving RTA is a new paradigm for all of us. We have a lot to learn from each other. RTA changes the relationships between IFAD and its member states. And I appreciated how Rosanna Polastri described how this is evolving in Latin America and specifically in Peru. The intervention of our colleague Karsten Rasmussen of the European Commission was also enlightening and showed that the efforts made by the European Commission, which is a long-term reliable partner of IFAD in the field of RTAs, complements that IFAD can do. And I think we got some practical leads on how to follow up on that. The European Commission can have an additional channel to partner with IFAD through RTAs. IFAD can bring to member countries added value of being experts in the provision of services in the agricultural sector, of our niche of expertise, rural transformation, being inclusive and reaching the last mile, a domain on which we have more than 40 years of experience. This is a niche that we have the ambition to develop, including through cooperation with the member states and the partners that are here. So to conclude, distinguished representatives and guests, the world is changing, and IFI's international finance institutions need to change with the world. RTA is part of that change, and I think today was a very good exchange of how we can use this more productively and more extensively to reach the rural poor in rural transformation. There's a number of questions in the chat that haven't been answered yet, and I would like to remind my colleagues to take note and to follow up bilaterally with the different people that have asked these questions. And more importantly, I look forward to working with all of you to work towards a world free of poverty and to reach the SDGs in these hard times, and to use RTA as one of the instruments to do that. Thank you very much.
Very much. Thank you very much, Maaike, for your inspiring word and especially for contributing with your direct experience with RTAs. I want to reassure you and all the participants that have sent message in chatters, so I've asked for the floor, that they will be replied in the next few days. We arrived to the end of this webinar. It's a different kind of event. Now we know since March 2020. We have to get used to this, and I think we have done it in a good and professional way. Our colleagues from the different divisions and organizations have supported us. I would like to thank very strongly Maaike van Gieningen and Donald Brown for the kind words and strong support. Of course, Turaya Triki, the dedicated victim that is my director that has been behind me for all these days. And supporting me, and of course my right and left arm, which are Alessandra and Viola. And I want to thank all of you for the kind patience and attention to this webinar. Thank you very much, and look forward to see you in the RTA activities of IFAD. Bye.